When Panic Attacks by David D. Burns. David D. Burns's When Panic Attacks is a practical, research-backed guide to overcoming anxiety, panic, and fear using cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT. Unlike self-help books focusing only on theory, Burns provides step-by-step techniques to rewire negative thought patterns and regain control over emotions. The book is written in a warm, conversational tone, making complex psychological concepts easy to understand. Burns draws from decades of clinical experience, sharing real patient stories and proven exercises that help readers dismantle anxiety at its roots. The book begins by explaining that anxiety is not caused by external events but by distorted thinking patterns. Burns introduces the idea that changing the way we think can dramatically reduce panic attacks, phobias, and chronic worry. He emphasizes that anxiety disorders, whether social anxiety, OCD, health anxiety, or generalized anxiety, are all rooted in similar cognitive distortions. The good news? These distortions can be challenged and replaced with healthier, more realistic thoughts. Chapter 1: Understanding Anxiety and Panic. This chapter breaks down what anxiety is, a survival mechanism gone haywire. Burns explains how the brain's fight or flight response, meant to protect us from danger, can misfire and trigger panic over everyday situations. He describes the physical symptoms, racing heart, dizziness, nausea, and the psychological terror that accompanies panic attacks. Many people mistake these symptoms for a heart attack or losing control, which fuels even more fear. Burns reassures readers that panic attacks, while terrifying, are not dangerous. He introduces the concept of exposure therapy, facing fears gradually to desensitize the brain. The chapter also dispels myths, like the idea that anxiety is purely genetic or unchangeable. Instead, Burns argues that with the right tools, anyone can reduce their anxiety significantly. Chapter 2: The Cognitive Model: How Thoughts Create Anxiety. Here, Burns dives deeper into the core principle of CBT: our thoughts shape our emotions. He introduces common cognitive distortions, thinking traps, that fuel anxiety, such as catastrophizing, what if I faint in public, mind reading, everyone thinks I'm stupid, and all or nothing thinking, if I'm not perfect, I'm a failure. Using relatable examples, he shows how these distortions trick the mind into overreacting. For instance, someone with social anxiety might interpret a slight pause in conversation as proof they're boring when, in reality, the other person was just distracted. Burns provides simple exercises to identify these distortions in daily life. One key technique is the daily mood log, where readers track anxious thoughts and analyze their validity. By the end of the chapter, readers learn that anxiety isn't a life sentence, it's a habit of thinking that can be unlearned. Chapter 3: The Hidden Emotion Model: Unexpressed Feelings. Burns explores how suppressed emotions, like anger, guilt, or sadness, can morph into anxiety. For example, someone who bottles up resentment at work might develop unexplained panic attacks. The mind, unable to process the buried emotion, converts it into physical symptoms. Burns shares case studies of patients whose anxiety lifted once they addressed underlying feelings. One woman with severe health anxiety realized she was grieving her father's death but hadn't allowed herself to feel it. Techniques like the feeling journal help readers uncover hidden emotions by asking, "What am I upset about?" The chapter also teaches assertiveness skills, showing how to express needs calmly instead of letting frustrations build up. Burns emphasizes that anxiety often masks deeper issues and resolving them can bring lasting relief. Chapter 4: The Acceptance Paradox: Making Peace with Anxiety. This chapter introduces a counterintuitive idea: fighting anxiety often makes it worse. Burns explains how trying to suppress panic, "I must stay calm," creates more tension, like trying not to think of a pink elephant. Instead, he advocates floating through anxiety, accepting the discomfort without resistance. A patient terrified of elevators learned to say, "Okay, I'm panicking. It's uncomfortable, but it can't hurt me." Over time, her fear lost its power. Burns also debunks safety behaviors, like carrying water to avoid choking, that reinforce fear. By leaning into anxiety instead of running, readers retrain their brains to see panic as harmless. The chapter includes mindfulness exercises, such as observing panic symptoms neutrally. My heart is racing. Interesting. To reduce their intensity. Chapter 5, Exposure Therapy, Facing Your Fears. Burns provides a step-by-step guide to overcoming phobias and avoidance. The key is gradual exposure, starting with mildly scary situations and building tolerance. For instance, someone afraid of driving might begin by sitting in a parked car, then driving around the block, then on busier streets. Burns stresses that exposure only works if done without distractions, no calming music or white-knuckling through it. Readers learn to rate their fear on a scale and stay in the situation until the anxiety drops by half. Real-life examples include a man who conquered his fear of public speaking by practicing in front of a mirror, then a friend, then small groups. The chapter also covers flooding, a faster, more intense method where a person confronts their worst fear head-on, like a claustrophobic person spending an hour in a closet. Burns advises this only with professional support but notes its surprising effectiveness. Chapter 6, The Perfectionism Trap. Many anxiety sufferers are high achievers who believe they must never fail. Burns explains how perfectionism backfires, creating constant stress and self-criticism. He contrasts healthy striving, doing your best, with unhealthy perfectionism, believing anything less than perfect is unacceptable. A student who panicked before exams learned to reframe her thoughts, even if I fail, I'm still worthy. Burns introduces techniques like anti-perfectionism experiments, purposely making small mistakes, e.g., wearing mismatched socks, to prove the world doesn't end. Readers also practice self-compassion, replacing harsh inner criticism with kinder, more realistic messages. The chapter highlights how self-worth shouldn't depend on achievements and letting go of perfectionism can dramatically reduce anxiety. Chapter 7, Relationship Anxiety and People-Pleasing. Fear of rejection or conflict drives much of social anxiety. Burns explores how people-pleasers suppress their true feelings to avoid disapproval, which breeds resentment and anxiety. One woman's panic attacks stopped when she set boundaries with her demanding mother. Techniques include the disarming technique, finding truth in criticism without crumbling, and assertiveness training, expressing needs respectfully. Readers learn that they can't control others' opinions, only their reactions. A powerful exercise involves listing what they fear. If I say no, they'll hate me, and testing those beliefs in real life. Often, they discover their fears were exaggerated. Burns also addresses jealousy and trust issues, showing how insecurity stems from self-doubt rather than a partner's actions. Chapter 8, Maintaining Progress and Preventing Relapse. The final chapter focuses on long-term strategies to stay anxiety-free. Burns warns against the illusion of cure, assuming anxiety won't return, and instead encourages ongoing practice of CBT tools. Readers create a personalized relapse prevention plan, identifying early warning signs like sleeplessness or irritability, and which techniques worked best for them. Burns emphasizes that setbacks are normal and not failures. A man who'd overcome health anxiety panicked during a flu scare but used his skills to calm down within minutes, whereas before, it would have spiraled for weeks. The book ends on a hopeful note: anxiety doesn't have to control your life. With consistent effort, readers can rewire their brains for lasting peace. Conclusion. When Panic Attacks is more than a book, it's a toolbox for reclaiming your life from anxiety. Burns' blend of science, compassion, and practical exercises empowers readers to challenge their fears systematically. By understanding the roots of panic and practicing proven techniques, anyone can reduce their anxiety and live more freely. The message is clear: you are not broken, and healing is possible. Thanks for your time. See you later.